Hey everybody, Texas Trucker here, Lance's Performance Shop along with StarMopars.com. It's actually been a little while, and I've got all these videos, the whole setup. I think we wound up doing maybe 4 parts so far. And, got everything there, and as best I know, this is the start of a new part here, or it might be the continuation of like a couple of clips, I don't really know. But essentially we are to a point where we just need to dial this thing in, right? And the reason I say dial it in is, if you recall, it was not cutting well, evidenced by what we have down here. It cuts fine in terms of getting, you know, piece of material away from the bigger piece of material, but it just doesn't really cut straight. And you kind of have 2 planes of contention here. You're going to, as the blade comes down, you're basically going to have to ensure that it goes up and down, but then as it runs out is kind of the issue. So here on the deck, if we scoot in and I don't slide off this creeper seat, which seems to be an occurring trend here, I don't know that you can tell, but we'll just assume, let me get this out of the way, we're going to assume that this gap between machine surface A and machine surface B is uniform, right? Flush across the top, and the gap is, you know, it's like not like this measures an inch here and this side measures an inch and 3/8, and you know, it's an inch and a half in the middle. We're going to assume that the gap between these is even. Okay, so when we do that, do you see a problem with the blue shelf that we've painted down below? The blade, if we start here on the left side, it's pretty close to this piece, right? I'm not going to touch it or anything, but it's close. And as we go, it's actually going in an angle this direction. It's obviously not that exaggerated, but it is definitely not maintaining an equidistant, you know, form. It's fairly close, but it is notably cantered in this orientation. So, what do? We've got to adjust it. How do we adjust it? Right here. It's kind of an odd adjustment, but if I zoom in here, you're going to see that that's kind of like, I guess you would call it keyed. I'm not sure what the import engineering term would be for that, but essentially if I loosen this bolt, I'm going to be able to kind of shimmy this around back and forth, fore and aft, whatever you need to call it. And what that's going to do is change the pitch of the blade, right? So if this is dead on and I come in and I loosen this screw and I turn it all the way this direction, I'm going to have the blade going in like this. If we don't adjust over here, you know, we can assume that the blade would be in, and then it's going to come and it's going to turn and angle down. So they sort of have to work in conjunction, you know, adjustment A and adjustment B, if you will. If you're concerned here, these would just be the guide rollers, and I'm not sure that they should be quite that tight, so we might need to work those as well. But before we really get started, you know, loosening this and trying to get everything basically like bird's eye view, if I could like split the middle and have, you know, like red on this side and yellow on this side, and just for the sake of argument, we're going to call that 1 inch gap. We would have 1/2 inch of yellow, 1/2 inch of red, and the blade would just literally align with the line below it, right? The dividing line between your 2 colors. So if you picture it that way, maybe it helps a bit. But it's close, but it's not good enough. You're going to have cuts like we've been getting, which again, if I don't fall, that'll be the test here. So when you look at this profile of cuts that we've made in various thicknesses, sometimes it's easier to see it on a thick cut like the thin one. That looks pretty well even, right? But then you come in here, and if this side where my thumb's at looks thin, and then that side looks taller, almost like we're cutting a wedge or a doorstop, that's the discrepancy in the blade. Okay, so that is what we need to dial in and adjust. Before we attempt to do any of that, though, we need to get this squared. And the way we're going to do that is with the vise. So this is all adjustable, right? This is on kind of this crank handle, which you can never get to because of the corner. There's so many little things you could do to vastly improve this machine. But you know, if I turn this over, you know, we're going to tighten or we're going to loosen, and as you can see, it swivels and flops around. It's adjustable here. This is also going to flop around until you tighten it down. Now on the back of this saw you've got your miter gauge, evidenced by this tracking here. This is going to be a fixed location, and then this pathway here is essentially going to allow you to go from a parallel cut 0 degree, where you can come in, you can make 15, 30, 45, what have you. And that's of course going to be great when you need to make 90-degree turns. You put two 45s together, right? But for dialing this in, for getting the blade perfectly oriented, we've got to start by having the square. So the easiest thing to do is to come to the back side, line it up with 0, kind of see where you're at. And I've run into an issue. All the tool hauls we do, everything we brought in, I don't have a square that's we can really utilize here. Maybe, you know, like if you take that piece off again, we could do it. But what we really need is like a little machinist square. And I don't mean like a, you know, 6 or 8 inch little. I mean like 2 inch, maybe 3 inch little. You could probably get by with a 4 inch. But ideally like a 2 or 3 inch machinist square. Prices for good ones are kind of nuts. I'm kind of weird with machine stuff. Like that's when like quality tends to matter more, right? So you jump up in price pretty good a lot of times. If you've ever seen the cheap ones, they don't look bad, they look pretty good, but then when you actually need them to be square, they're not. And that's further exasperates your issues, right? You can do everything perfect and it's just gonna become a moot point because the square itself is off. Terrible position to find yourself. And it's not a deal where you can get the cheap one for 10 bucks and the good one's like 25. It's like you can get the cheap one for 10 to 25 and then the good one's like a couple hundred. Yeah, it's crazy. Almost like stare-it territory, right? Squares I've got, closest thing is like this little Empire down here. I've got some like first ever square I was given, Popular Mechanics. It's like a 12 inch or something. And so the closest I've got is from Fireball Tool. And the cool thing here, we've kind of got like 3 edges here, and then this one. I don't remember if this is the Mutant or the Minion, or it's something along those lines. So in theory though, like I've got this pretty well dialed in at 90. I've got an angle gauge, I've got a level, we can kind of confirm that stuff. But when I run this out, you don't want to, you know, just rum it in. If you do that, you know, you can hit the blade and you can make things seem good, but I want you to pay attention to this back corner. Just watch this wall here as I pull this down. When I hit the blade, let's see if we can get everything in the frame. I've hit the blade, right? And there is a gap that you should see here. If we ran a feeler gauge, we could get a couple thousandths here, and then this we couldn't get anything down, okay? And obviously if we had like the bigger edge back there, and we would have an even bigger gap here, again, because the blade is out more here than it's in on this side. So now pay attention. I'm going to, it's a very, just a couple thousandths difference, but if I shimmy this and make this side flush, do you see how we broke the corner here? This is what happens with a bigger piece. You know, you shave a bookmark and you can't tell much. You shave a 2 inch piece and like I said, you're cutting door wedges. So that kind of gives you an idea of where the blade is at. And yes, you can push the blade, you know, fore and aft, but if you just come in and touch it, you know, not enough to disturb it, you've got the gap right there. So I'm not sure that you can differentiate, but if it looks like you see a little bit of black here versus on that side, it's because you do. So again, if we pan back out and I just make this side flush, you're gonna see it kick out, and now you've got that black here again from a gap. So we've got this good. I'm confident that that's 90. I will show you some gauges and levels on there here in a second, but then we want to start playing with this adjustment. That's what we're going to tackle right now. All right, if you buy things, you should use them, and this Klein angle gauge is going to tell us 0 degrees. That's right where we want to be. Tilt down, it's going to read an error. If I throw it back there, we're going to accomplish 2 things. Number 1, you're going to see pretty much maintain our accuracy, and then here you can see on our little Pocket Pro, not quite perfect, but pretty close. And that actually maintains the entire length. If we were to come in here with our Empire, we basically are doing the same thing in that center vial. So again, feel good there. What I want to highlight next is if we come in here to, they tend on this saw to call it upper and lower. You know, this would be upper, closest to the swing out. I'm mainly going to cut horizontal, so it's not as useful of a terminology. But if you look at this gap right here, okay, that is a considerable distance, right? I'm talking about kind of this little keyed portion here. We could wedge some stuff down in there if we want to. If we come over here, you can wedge stuff down there, but it's not quite as long. And I kind of think, you know, assuming everything's equal, those should kind of be a mirror image, right? If we had this touching here, this should be touching here to have the blade in the same position. So if you think of it as a clock, they're just not clocked the same. So my first adjustment is we're just gonna even it out. And what you need is 13mm stuff. So we've got semi-deep Koken paired with a Napros. I know, blasphemy, mixing brands there. Got the Tecton, that's kind of a new pickup, and metric anyway, and then a little Icon stubby. The semi-deep works perfect. Basically brings my ratchet out here. It's awesome. But I'm gonna just kind of pick one, and I'll go off camera and kind of look down and see which one I want to have. I'm not sure that I wouldn't like this position better and then just adjust this to match. So I think that'll be our start point, and we'll kind of see how it goes down. All right, as I was doing this off camera, I came in and I thought, you know, that's probably the best look I can give people. I think it's very apparent. Big gap here, and it gets smaller. Opposite on the flip side, you've got a, you know, gap here that's bigger, and it gets smaller, and that's because, again, the blade is tracking up in this general direction. So I think what I'm going to do is loosen this right here, again 13mm wrench or socket, and we're just going to kind of try to rotate this out. So basically this will come in and we'll just sort of see where we're at and kind of make adjustments from there. All right, I think you'll be able to tell what I'm doing here, but pay attention to your gaps and see how the blade ran way in on this side. If I now tilt this side down and away, you'll see that it does the opposite, and you'll note that that's actually like way more in line. It's not centered in the gap, but it's pretty even, and that's kind of what I'm going for. If I just let it return to natural, it's kind of in that same angled position. So it's definitely going to have to be manipulated. But I think what I will do is, again, just kind of try to get this squared up, and then we'll anchor it down and see what our cuts are looking like. Okay, I feel like for an initial adjustment, this is, I mean, it looks way better. It's pretty close, I'm going to think. But if you think, man, there's more space over here, it's kind of an optical illusion because you've got the body of the square and then you kind of open it up to a larger cavity. But if I back the square up just a tad, I had it pretty tight in there and trying to get it good. The side we're really concerned about is that back side closest to the square. And from here anyway, looks decent. So how do you test? You test. You make a cut and you see if it looks better than it did before, and then you check the squareness of the cut. So I'm going to do that, and we'll sort of see where we're at. The next step, instead of just kind of continuing playing around, eyeballing it and then checking it manually, if we're not close or we want to try to get even better, we'll come in, I'll try to get like a steel ruler over here, and we'll kind of see where we're at, you know, exacting style. So right now this is just my first time playing around with it, so we'll see how close we can get it. All right, looks good, right? Or does it? Take a look down the barrel of that 2x4 and you will see a gap that again resembles a wedge. And why is that? You just adjusted this. You thought it would be better. Well, we hadn't made a cut, and what this is the piece that we previously cut from. I know this end was cut because I've got the barcode stapled to the back end. Again, trim these off of 2x4x8, basically 4-inch little blocks. When I fix the fence, get it down to 92, keep these for miscellaneous purposes. So this is the side that was cut in the wedge formation, right? So now whenever I come in and we just slide this through, we'll do a decent, you know, maybe like a 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch cut, and we'll see one side is going to be bad. Okay, we're going to put a Sharpie mark on this one, and it's the other side that we're going to kind of want to look and check for squareness. So let's go ahead and prepare for the test cut. Sweet. So, something I'm happy. This actually made the complete cut, evidenced by our piece shooting with the direction of the blade, and it shut off, so that's good, that's progress. Again, this is going to be not looking good because it was wedge-shaped on one side of the cut. Now, if we pull this out of there, that's going to be evidenced right there. So, what we're concerned about is the backside of the cut, and most importantly, that new section there. I'm going to come in, we're going to put our L and R, and we're going to put a 4 on this piece. We're going to make the cut, and that will be what we demo and check for squareness. Alright, ran and got some stuff, but we're going to take our little mutant or minion, whichever one it is, set it down there. That's obviously nothing we've done. That's the top side of the board. You can see, not quite perfect. So, if I take this, we know the deck of the saw is surprisingly close to 90. We're just going to take, again, the same square, and that's better than it was on the top side. So if I square that up, note, there's nothing egregious. If we have the wedge, which we just shaved off, and that's evidenced by number 3, we place it here, and now, when we put this square, you're going to see it'll still bottom out, but it's leaning a bit, right? Especially the top side that you're not seeing. If we were to take our levels and throw it up top, you're going to note on this little Pocket Pro, that's not quite 90. It's close, but not quite. So, no trickery on my end. We're going to take this, we're going to take the square, set the square down, pan down, and get the wedge off, throw that there. Put the square back. Now, could we do this without the square? You bet, but it's a little cooler. It looks more involved, right? And that's still, it's almost like it shifted to the other side, unfortunately. Let's see if we can make any amends here. Maybe we didn't have it back far enough. Is it better, or is it the same on the other side? That remains to be seen. So continuing the experiment here, we're going to take and we're going to flip this up. Set it right there. I'm going to take our little level and we're going to switch hands here. I'm going to set it down. This is close. This is not perfect, but it's pretty dadgum close, especially considering the stand, to a full-on 90, right? So we're going to we're going to set this up here. We're going to move the wood to roughly the same spot. That is very close, but not quite perfect, right? More 90 than 89. But now, if I take the wedge, just simply lift up our level, stick it there, throw the wedge down, check out what happens here. Yeah, you can see we're at least making progress. What I want to do now is clear this out of the way, get the wedge gone. And, we're going to throw this back between the jaws of the vise, slide it forward and make a cut, and then we will see where we're at with this piece, checking it on a square. Alright, so fast forward a little bit, you can see we're about to make cut 8, and I say we because you're going to be involved in this one. What happened to me? We had everything like really good, and unfortunately I did not have this tight enough, because apparently as I tightened the vise down, it pushed it off of 0 and threw everything out of alignment. Lesson learned, I think I got that around like cut 4, which is why you see cut 5, cut 6, and cut 7. If you see like the 4 and the 3 when you're confused, and then the 4 and the 3 and a third over there and you're confused, and then the 4 and the 4, well, those are millimeters thick. So essentially using some cheap little plastic calipers I've got here, where sitting, you can kind of see the difference there, sort of wedge shaped, right, discernible with the blue. Right here, it's going to be a little bit better, not quite as much of a wedge. And then number 7 here, lucky 7 is going to look really good to you. That's because it's basically identical. There might just be a little bit extra material here, but super negligible, especially considering the origins of everything. So what I'm going to do is we're going to kick this thing out. I'll let you see the cut, and then we'll check and make sure we have the same accuracy as we do with 7. Alright, I do want to stress we'd get like a way cleaner cut if I could extend the material to at least that ledge. I'm trying to make the most of like 4 inches here. And this is also really hard to do without a tripod, so let me put you on my knee pod and see if I can get my hand clear. And we're done. So I was off a half second, wasn't that cool. But essentially, if I pick this up, that looks pretty solid here. So I'm gonna say that's about maintained our 4 and 4 millimeters thickness there. I think she's dialed. Basically, the easiest way to do this is square that up to 90. Again, that was my mistake, that it was getting pushed with the vise. Again, really go to town when you tighten that thing. And then I apologize, I misspoke. I was like, why are these 13 millimeter wrenches not fitting? What's wrong? I thought it must have been like the tecton was off a little bit. Nope, it was actually a 14 millimeter. So I had my sockets out of order on that little peg holder. So 14 millimeter wrench or socket that you'll need for these. There's kind of our final adjusting place. And basically I took that little minion square, pretty sure it's a minion, and once that was dialed in at 0, I just came in, pushed it up, and then we sort of looked down the barrel, got it square, and went to town there. So once again, I can't really, the tripod would be super tall and I'm sitting on a creek. This thing is short. I think that was one of the shortcomings. Like, there's a shop back for reference. Like 4-drawer Harbor Freight US General cart like towers above this thing. So anyway, I think we've got it good enough to kind of cut stuff that we care about now. Not that we don't care about the little 2x4. But anyway, that's sort of my process here. Just, you know, trial by error. I think we eyeballed it really well. It's just unfortunate for me. I didn't realize that we were pushing the vise back. And when you do that, obviously, you know, your material kind of changes a little shape there. So I think we're good. There could be some improvements made. This handle is nuts. I get it. I guess they think it's going to be more vertical than horizontal. But it's just a deal where I can't get my hand here and like turn the handle without like clipping this, which is a gap with the body of the saw and then the steel plated cover there. That could be improved. A couple little things. I think ours, you can kind of see the rough part line there. I've got really good clean cuts on about 3 of these, almost like a 50-50 thing. But I don't know, maybe we need to elevate that a little bit. The guide rollers, they're honestly not that bad. I think they could be tightened, I should say set, calibrated a bit, but I don't think they're going to hinder anything. It just sounds like the blade's tracking good. So for right now, I think we're going to be okay, because again, I just really want to get some cuts done and some stuff that I've kind of got pending, waiting on the saw functioning. I'm going to do that, see how it does. We can always come in and make adjustments and go from there. So as we do that, if we do that, I'll keep you posted, let you know how it goes. I'm gonna mic this, make sure that we're sitting 4 millimeters on both ends. Why am I using metric, you ask? Well, that's because they're cheap plastic calipers and that's what's on the bottom and easier to read, so that's what we're doing. But anyway, I had a good time out here, got a little bit done on a late night, Thursday night. I got to get in, work out, shower, all that stuff. Didn't realize it was quite this late. Pushing 11 o'clock now. But yeah, that's how I went about dialing it in. 90 degrees at your 0 mark. Come in, use a square. In my case, you know, this little guy right there worked wonderful. It's roughly the size of the 2x4. Worked great. So there we go. Hopefully this helps you out. LoneStarMopars.com is a website. You can find us Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all 3 at Lone Star Mopars. If you like the video, leave card timed out. But if you got thoughts, a better way of doing this, whatever it might be, feel free to let people know. Help them out, obviously. It's too late for you to help me, but I appreciate the attempt you're making. So anyway, we'll see how this thing performs over time. But again, if you like multiple videos, I encourage you to subscribe. We've got new ones Wednesdays and Saturday mornings, 9 a.m. Texas time. But I've set myself up for a pretty, hopefully, productive weekend here, although I think I've got to work Saturday, so half a weekend. Kinda. Still better than nothing, I suppose. So I'll get to that. We'll kind of see how this thing works. Again, I think it's going to be a great addition to the shop. Pretty simple and straightforward to get this kind of set up and functional. So could it be improved? Yes. Will we improve it? Possibly. Main thing right now is just kind of if we decide to tweak the guide rollers a little bit. I do think they're a smidge tight. They're not bad, but I think they should probably spin a little freer than that. But anyway, I'm gonna quit rambling. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned a little something again. If you know a better way to do this, way faster way to do this, tell people, help them. Can't help me, but you can help them. And appreciate your efforts just the same. But with that said, like I said, got to get inside, get some working out and showering done, and we'll be back here playing with a little Harbor Freight 4x6 in future videos.